They're circling the airport. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark McCoy, Dean of the Music School. Welcome to DePauw. We're thrilled that you're here. And this is an exciting week for us, and I want to start by inviting you back. On Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night, you're going to have the opportunity to hear some absolutely remarkable music from around the world. This camp has brought people together, over 75 musicians together from over a dozen countries, and let's say welcome to all of those folks. It's so great to have you here. We can't wait to see what you have in store for us. This is going to be a really special evening. So we hope that you'll come back on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I want to quickly make a couple of introductions. I'd like to welcome you to DePauw on behalf of our president, Dr. Brian Casey. And those of you that have been here before know that all of the great things that the music school is doing can be directly attributed to two folks, Judson and Joyce Green, and they're with us tonight. So we've started this little initiative here at DePauw called the 21st Century Musician Initiative, which is an effort to try to create the musician of the future instead of the past. And Yo-Yo is chairing our advisory board, and we've got some great musicians here tonight from all around the country, also to serve as part of our advisory board, which will be working tomorrow. There's a lot of great things going on here at DePauw. So tonight we're going to hear a great conversation between two musicians that are absolutely phenomenal musicians. And I introduced that a little bit with the 21st Century Musician thing because when I asked Yo-Yo Ma what he thought of 21st century musicianship and what was great 21st century musicianship, he said the greatest 21st century musician I know is Mike Block.
And you can see that on his website.
Mike has been absolutely terrific. The campers have all met him. We're a phenomenal player. We can't wait to have him on campus for so many things. And he's going to be running tonight's interview with the one and only Yo-Yo Ma.
This is going to be bad.
Check.
Check.
We're on. So here we are at the first Global Musician Workshop. First day. We had a great day, and Yo-Yo and I got to walk around and see all of the bands and workshops that we're rehearsing today. We even got to hear an interesting fact from every participant here. Some of them were not quite appropriate, but it was really a great opportunity, and I was actually telling in our community meeting, like, it was this fascinating movie almost, where we would open a door and there's like, this is a Celtic ensemble. And then through door number 2, we have a Latin ensemble. Except in the Latin ensemble, there's a Comanche. And in the Celtic room, there's an oud. And nothing was as it should be. And so that's kind of a big part about this workshop. And what DePauw has started with their 21CM, the 21st Century Musician Initiative, has a lot of overlapping values with what we're doing here, but also with what we do at the Silk Road Project, which is the organization that Yo-Yo started, Silk Road. And so I had a bunch of really, really brilliant questions for Yo-Yo tonight. And then right before we came on, we changed plans. So I think what we were going to try and do is set the stage for in the world and sort of find the environment that we're operating in as musicians, as artists. But before we know how we fit in, before we know what we can do, we wanted to sort of take stock of the world around us, right?
Great. how
Okay,
we
you
wanna
go
take
first.
stock. Well, this is something I learned from Laura Freed, our CEO, because we had a meeting a while ago, and she said we have to take an environmental scan. What's an environmental scan? Do you guys have any idea? Sort of, what's the world around us? And I thought that would be an interesting thing to think about. You're, what, 30 years old?
33.
You're 33, you look 30, and you act 33.
How old are you?
I'm 59. So we're, you know, can you turn my mic down just slightly? So we're about, 7 years apart. And what is life like for you? What are you struggling with? A lot of our participants here are probably, what, in, between 20 and 90, right? Or,
A lot of college students, a lot of young professionals,
yeah,
a lot of professionals.
We have one senior graduating from high school that's going to enter freshman year next year. So
Here at
18
DePauw?
Yeah, here at DePauw. And we actually, what I loved about what we heard today was, hello?
A little bit of feedback.
So what I heard today was that people came from such different backgrounds, not only countries and instruments, but we had a biology teacher who actually plays the Irish harp, right? We have a neuroscientist. We had an electrical engineer, I think, formerly, but we still have a practicing neuroscience person. So we have like people from, almost in every group, a surprise person that is not necessarily what we think ought to be. So I've always struggled, and I'm still struggling with my voice, struggled with sort of figuring out what is all this for? Who are we doing it for? Are we doing it because, and who are we trying to please? Are we pleasing ourselves? Are we pleasing our parents? Are we pleasing our teachers? Are we pleasing our community? You speak a lot about your community, which I believe is an ever-expanding one. But you've talked about your community. Edgar Meyer talks about his community. And in his case, it's sort of like the Nashville bluegrass community that is absolutely, central to his finding his voice in music, or one of the central pillars. What is your community?
My favorite thing of playing different styles of music is that actually they all access different communities. When I was playing classical music, only classical music, like in school, I felt that I was often performing for people that weren't like me. And so I started to search for situations where I could perform for an audience that was like me, people my age, people with my interests. And so I joined a lot of really bad rock bands in New York. And but as I started learning more styles, bluegrass has an incredible community, and there's a great Celtic community, there's a jazz community. Like every style, like Hadi introduced me to this whole incredible, generous community of Lebanese musicians in New York, and the way that they embraced me was incredible, and so, every style of music has a different community of musicians, but also a different community of audience. So obviously, like now, I almost yearn for finding an audience that's not like me. How can I find a way to reach people that, I grew up in Kansas, in a suburb. It's not the most exciting background. And there's a whole world of people out there with other backgrounds. And so, for me, that's always like what I find fascinating of trying to learn other styles is tapping into other communities and trying to contribute.
So do you play differently in different places?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So like how?
You know what it is? I'm glad that we're having this conversation so I can get more of my thoughts out here.
Well, I will answer those same questions because I get asked those questions a lot. You know, what's your favorite place to play? What is your favorite country to play? You know, so what kind of music do you really like? Or, you know, so I just thought, I'm interested because you have specifically identified. Now, do I need to speak up more in order to have less echo, or should I speak? What? Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I'll speak up more, but if you can lower the boom, 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 boom echo of...
Yeah, it's very boomy.
Is that okay?
From where we are.
Is that a deal? Okay, thank you.
I feel enveloped in the voice of Yo-Yo right now.
That's not... So...
Well, I'll ask you the same question. And so I think the whole, as we're going to find this week at the workshop, you know, as you're learning different languages to speak musically, you have to do physically different things on your instrument. And avoiding all the boring technicalities of that, ultimately what I get out of it is I feel different musics bring out different parts of myself. And I feel different when I'm playing a classical string quartet. And I can access a different part of myself when I'm playing in a bluegrass band or, you know, in an Arabic ensemble. And so, or singing my own songs. For me, it's actually a way to really explore all the different parts of me because, you know, our environments, you know, bring out certain things in us. And if you change your environment, suddenly you can think, like, what kind of person am I in an Arabic jam? You know, what kind of jazz, like what kind of jazz improviser am I? And so that's what I find fascinating.
Can you describe specifically what playing in an Arabic ensemble makes you identify in yourself?
Actually, most of my what I would consider authentic Arabic experiences with Hadi Eldebek, our oud teacher. Did I say it right? Okay. Shukran, Habibi. And so, you know, what I was struck by Hadi's scene in New York is the community, and just that you had these 7 or 8 Lebanese guys, many of whom, you know, had day jobs. Nick is a chemistry teacher at Columbia or something like that. But basically, these guys were getting together for the sheer joy of it, and they were jamming, they were dancing. It actually was the closest thing I'd ever seen to an old-time jam, an old-time Appalachian fiddle jam, where you just have these people that are just playing, and it's just totally participatory. And that was sort of the point, was to be a part of it, not to listen to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was struck today hearing Hanukah's group, Hanukah, who's a wonderful fiddler and was leading a group, and the two of you are married, and Hanukah was really explaining the difference between Scottish and Cape Breton. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Right? And then also making the tie in between Scottish and Scandinavian music, that's very close, and then she ended up playing a Finnish song, you know, going back to Helsinki. So that somehow it spanned quite a lot of, so this is like a technical thing. She said the Cape Breton version of the tune, of a tune, would be more accented, right? See, I listened for like 2 minutes, and so, and that is exactly what I think, what I learned, you know, in terms of hearing, or people would teach me or tell me the difference between Mozart and Haydn, and Haydn and Bach. And so but then what I learned was that when I first played some music, sort of, we called it Appalachian music, but with Mark O'Connor and you played with him also in Edgar Meyer, I actually saw something astounding, because at the same time that I was interested in what the early instrument people were doing with Baroque style, Mark O'Connor and Edgar Meyer were saying, well, fiddling tradition, that's like hundreds of years old of oral tradition. So, and what I realized was that what they were doing in bowing, articulation, whatever, was essentially a visual parallel to what the people were doing playing Baroque music. And that was like an amazing moment, because up until that moment, the two worlds, certainly in my mind, did not match. But now, since we don't have recordings from that time, we have treatises on how things were done at a certain time from the early instrument crowd, and I have an immediate tactile representation of what an oral tradition looks like in the late 20th century. So those are just, but that's a technical thing. What I'm interested in is sort of how you bring the content of what you do, of what we're all doing, to an audience. Because I think we spend a lot of time focusing on content, the product, but we actually focus less on customer service. You know, none of us like to hear, what is it, one of those interminable, this is a recording, you know, this call is being monitored for quality control. If you want,
right,
so-and-so, press 1. If you want,
yeah,
right? and we want the human contact and the response of whatever we do. And so I'm wondering, so you say you play differently when you play different things, it draws from a different part of you. But what about for an audience? Do you play differently for each audience? Do you suss out what is, you know, do you guys play differently in different people? You do. So you are responsive. You are what I would call, well, you're aware musicians then, right? Because some people deliver something that is very well, beautifully packaged, which is fantastic. But it's like, but that's a constant decision that you have to make to say, well, I'm including the audience in what I'm doing, I'm not including them, I'm drawing them in, or I'm actually delivering something that I would like to share. And I think those are slightly different ways of
I know
communication.
in some of like the programming process for Silk Road that we go through, I know that you're very sensitive to the audience that we're going, and to the countries even, and trying to find the program that will resonate for them. So I can see, like, in the preparation of written music, choosing the right pieces is important. If you're in the middle of a piece that's through composed and you're trying to read a room, what are you able to do in real time while you're performing something that's already set? Like, how do you try and feed off of the audience? Or
oh, there's a huge number of things that you can do. You know, I think people can be unbelievably responsive to the tiniest changes. For example, there's lots you can do, you know, the same version of. You know, little things can have a huge difference, but sometimes little things make no difference. You just need to know which is which, right? I think, and that's, so because everything that we do is essentially the differentiation between what's regular and irregular, what is expected, what is unexpected. And so you then, if you accentuate the parts that are unexpected, you can have a different ratio of equilibrium in terms of how you want to deliver that part. And to say, wait a minute, pay attention, something big is happening. It's actually, you just moved half a step. But that half step is incredibly important. If you know that's important, actually, people will also feel that.
Yeah. And that's, as trying to play and be comfortable in different styles, that's always the one thing that transcends is the idea of tension and release, and what is how to do that, how to test the boundaries of tension and then release, and so that's like a good foundation for any style to sort of understand what are those parameters and what can you do to do that when you're playing other styles of music that you didn't grow up playing. Like what are the things you look for in order to find your personal voice, to find how you be expressive in a style that isn't yours?
Well, a style is not yours until you make it yours. It's that simple. Something is difficult until you make it easy. And for me, it's as simple as you're on the outside of something or you're on the inside of something. And if you're invited in to someone's world, you're in. You start to mess around, fool around. You can't go wrong. So I think a lot about that. If someone says, "Welcome to my home," "Welcome to my style," "Welcome to my world," you then figure out, what is your world? Tell me about your world. What's beautiful in you? What do you consider really beautiful? What do you consider something that you really need to avoid? Right? So what's the framing of your world? And every society has that. Every culture has that. Every group of people has a certain, this guy's like exceeding what we consider is good behavior, right? Is he doing it on purpose? Is he unaware? How should I take this, right? If you push, like, you're a very honest person. And when I first met Mike, I so loved his character because you had no fear.
What Yo-Yo is saying very nicely is that I often say things when I shouldn't.
No, you challenged, so like if something wasn't right, and you would actually say it. You would just say it. You didn't think, oh, I'm talking to a much older person, or I shouldn't say these things. None of the old world culture of something, I won't do this because this is, but I admired that because it didn't make sense to him, and I thought, great, I now know how he thinks, and I really admired the way you think. And I think it's that level of honesty that actually allows you to organize something like this and do it so well, because you have really good critical thinking skills, and you have really great performance chops and access inside to different styles of playing. So I think honesty is a huge, the ability to actually take something and say, what about this? And I think that's a feature that's very important. But I was talking about getting inside someplace. I think once you're inside, you can't. I was talking to, I don't know, some of you may know Greg Sandow, who's here. Are you here? Yes. he is, I think you were a music critic, and your wife is a music critic. What? You were? What? Yes, once but no longer. But your wife is. And we were admiring what her ability to be critical but compassionate. So you could be critical, but you still are trying to understand someone's point of view. And so what she writes is never mean-spirited, but is kind of, you know, is to her best ability an honest assessment of something. So I think there are ways of, but once you're inside, you want to actually do your best to advocate for that voice. But you actually want, most of all, for that voice to be also your voice. Mm-hmm. So I think part of my interpretation of what you're saying, that different music draws from different parts of you, is that you're always using the same voice, but your advocacy for that style or for that music is complete. You're using all of yourself. You're not saying, I'm only using 15% of my block in order to play this music. You have to use, in fact, 100% of my block in order to make that music really resonant and palpable. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? You know, you can't, that's why you can never call in a performance.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you call in, it's like you're actually giving part of yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? Actually, I don't really want to be here. I'd rather be having pizza out at, you know, Marvin's or something. That's not true. We really want to be here, yeah. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, if we're accessing all of ourselves, this could segue into some ideas that we've been talking about in Silk Road, is this idea of cultural entrepreneurship, and that all of us, I think, to relative degrees, are entrepreneurs. Being a musician is like having a small business, and for any musician that's ever organized a single gig, you've had to access a whole bunch of administrative skills and instincts in order to put a band together, promote a gig, you know, book the venue, or whatever it may be, whether it's organizing festivals like Sandeep Das organizes the Hum Festival in India, Hattie runs the Brooklyn Nomad group in New York, and even if it's just like a band that you're taking on tour for 2 weeks and putting together a tour like Hanak and I just did a month ago, being a musician is more than just playing. And so as we're developing the sides of ourselves that can simply empower our artistic voice and give us the opportunity to share our art, you know, we've sort of developed this umbrella of cultural entrepreneurship. And I know it's overlapping a lot with what's happening here at DePauw with 21CM. And so I wanted to ask you, in the spirit of, you know, like accessing all of ourselves, like, can you speak to sort of 20 years from now, what does a musician look like? What does it mean to be a musician looking forward?
Well, 20 years from now, all of you will be 20 years older. There will be hair loss for some. But I think people will still need music. So no matter how much the world changes, people will still need music. Because unless assuming that the singularity moment that Ray Kurzweil talks about is not going to happen, and that we become subsumed by more intelligent machines that will run our lives. So assuming that doesn't happen.
Hold on, sorry, I'm getting a text.
It's from Ray Kurzweil. He's saying, stop that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. But so what I would like to see is, well, I don't know, maybe this is wishful thinking. I think a lot of 21CM is actually headed in that way. A lot of all of you, I hope, will be ideally really fulfilled being creative musicians, living in a community and working in communities that actually believe in what you're doing, but that you also offer something that is without you, that you found something that was missing in society that you're able to fill. That's what I'm hoping. So 20 years, so in order to do that, you know, yes, you will be 20 years older. So those of you that live in the United States, I hope will have a certain stability, such as health insurance. And if you live in politically unstable places, I wish those places would be stable enough that you can live in a place that you call home, and that where you can count on things kind of being stable enough for you to, if you wish, to raise a family. I hope that 20 years from now, I see you, you know, you say you want to have kids, so you probably will have kids who are, you know, graduating from high school, going to college. And so, but you see,
DePauw,
yes,
2022.
yes.
Actually, that's not enough time at all. What year is it?
No, it's 215, so we have to add, you know, whatever. Okay. So, but I think part of this cultural entrepreneurship thing is to actually look at the world that is right now for you, and then look at the world 20 years down the line. A lot of musicians never think about that because we don't have the mechanism to think that way. Oh, sorry. A lot of musicians, I think, don't necessarily think 20 years ahead because we don't have the capacity to think 20 years ahead, whereas other professions do. So part of cultural entrepreneurship is to say, well, can you find a way to live that is going to be really fulfilling to you while you are providing value to society, and that's recognized. So, is society right now recognizing that value? Are you providing that value? Are you recognizing what you are providing? You know, I would say don't take anything for granted. Look at what those of you that have graduated from school, some of you have a lot of debt. Some of you, you know, might be living at home or depending on your parents. You want to be independent. So what does it take to be independent? What does it take to actually pay a down payment for an apartment, you know, a 1 month rent, right? What happens when you get involved and a taxi crashes into you and you can't play for 6 months and you need surgery? Who's going to pay for that? So I think you can't do your best creative work if you don't have a certain degree of stability. So what can you do to get to that place of stability so that you can actually, you know, work really hard and work effectively to provide that value to society? And we're suggesting in cultural entrepreneurship that you make use of ideas and skill sets that maybe not have been required 20 years ago. Can you hear me now? A little better? Okay. And to make use of that, and which is what you're doing. He's invented the block strap. It's selling for $149, and he has 1,000 of them at his mother's apartment in Denver. And it really works. And I know one person who actually has one.
We've got a couple strappers already here.
Yeah. So, and not only that, it was because this camp exists only because I heard that Mike has been, and Hanukkah, they've been doing these camps, string camps, in many parts of the country.
MikeBlockStringCamp.com.
Yeah, and it works. You know, people come, they're happy, they learn a lot, and so that was the hope. We took, and DePauw took this risk, Silk Road took the risk of saying, you know, maybe we can do this. And guess what? You are doing it, and you guys showed up, and hopefully the first day was good enough that you feel that for the next week is going to happen. So to go back to the environmental scan, a lot of our urban areas in the States, maybe not in all of the countries, but certainly in a lot of the industrialized countries, the schools have 120 languages spoken. So many schools have no way of really addressing that kind of diversity in the population. And guess what? In the global music camp, you can.
GlobalMusicianWorkshop.com.
GlobalMusicianWorkshop.com. You can actually, I mean, you actually can get inside major groups of thinking and music and access it enough that you could swim around and learn more on your own once you get out. Right? And I think that's one way of contributing and providing value that actually most schools are really trying very, very hard to deal with this problem and can't quite solve it.
It reminds me, Silk Road had has an ongoing initiative called Silk Road Connect, which brings many artists from the ensemble, but also friends into public schools in New York. And we did a lot of visits, and there was one moment we were in Harlem at PS 161, me and Kevork Murad. Kevork is trying to get this right, he's an Armenian artist who grew up in Syria, a visual artist. And we went to this school in Harlem, and there was an Arabic girl there who he started talking to he was speaking Arabic to, and the teacher, Carla, was just weeping because she had this student. This was a mixed language class, English and Spanish, very Hispanic area of Harlem, and this was the first time in the whole school year that anybody was able to talk to this girl in her mother tongue. And it was because there was an artist from Syria, from Armenia, that was here and was able to connect to this girl. And suddenly the class was finding all of these things out about somebody who had been sitting there all year that they never knew because nobody could ask her. And so that's, that was just one of those highlights of being able to bridge. We've talked about like the public schools as its culture, and us as artists, we have our own culture, and so like cross-cultural collaboration, outside of the world of music, artists going into schools is a culture shock, and finding what new opportunities that was creating for us and for them that wouldn't have been possible had we not had an edge effect of these cultures.
What you're saying reminds me of one of the topics we covered at dinner at my table, which was how we deal with fear. Today there are a lot of people who are afraid of the constant and big changes that are taking place in our societies. And one of the things that I think that music does, it brings community together. It does promote trust amongst people who practice, oh, you know my music, you're okay. I didn't know, you would care. I think there are many levels where the antidote to fear is the openness that people can practice, because so often the reaction to fear is the closing of, the physical body, think of a turtle, or the mind. And I think that's something that's a very, very powerful tool. The Passion-Driven Institute that you've participated in is to say to teachers and students that don't want to go to school, right? That in fact, if you're passionate about something, you turn something that you might think that you should be doing into something that you really can't wait to do. We know that music did that for the people that are here at the workshop. Global Music Workshop. Musician.
.com.
Global
Musician Workshop. GMW.
Okay.
# Global Musician.
Okay. So, see, you know why I like him? So, fear, trust, passion, those are values that you practice that have unbelievable, that are worth a lot. And if you can share that, that's one way. And if you can actually, package it and teach it. So can you teach passion? That's a question. Can you teach empathy? Can you teach imagination? What do you need to teach imagination? I have a friend who says imagination is very easily taught because imagination is the artificial layering of different realities. Now think about that. The artificial layering of different realities. You all know several realities. You put one on top of the other, and it could be funny, it could be ridiculous. Suddenly, you see a different picture. And, you can practice that later on. But you know what I mean. If you did that constantly, you would develop a skill set of being able to get inside the head of anybody that you're talking to.
It's like a muscle, imagination muscle.
Yeah. And if there's one thing that is missing in our society is I think, there's a large empathy deficit. And you have the key to turning that into a surplus. You can conjure up worlds that are imagined, but you have access into other people's worlds, and you could bring it to life. How cool is that? So I think those are values. So I'm just thinking that if you thought that way, if we all thought that way, we would be net contributors to society. And that brings me to funding. Because for a long time, music depended on patronage. We do, thanks to the Greens and thanks to, we have the stage, this building to learn in and to present things in. But suppose you could depend less on patronage, or you prove that actually that you're making music or that your art form is not just beautiful, but it's for life's sake. that changes the, philosophically what you're doing. It's no longer, oh, this is art, but we're worried about poverty. This is art. This art is actually helping us have hope. It's giving us, skill sets of imagining things, imagining a future that's possible, imagining a better way to do things. So, it's your choice in terms of how you want to focus your tremendous, incredible talents. Because what we heard today was astounding. I mean, at 20 minutes into session 2,
Yeah.
the percussion group,
Bala's group and
Bala's group, and then, every group that we heard, you were all doing so well. I mean, I'm just sad not to be able to be here on Wednesday, Thursday. Is that right? Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, so at the time that we were getting to see all these bands was the first rehearsal of these groups. So we saw, even within the hour and a half, we saw going from introductions to performing by the last one. And so we were seeing things very much in process. Is the feedback okay with the mics? Are we good with volumes? Should we speak louder?
Do we have any time for questions?
We will, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anything more
You're
to say.
doing great. No, I feel like this is going really well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you bored yet? Because I know Brian's asleep already. He's had a very, very long month. A lot of speeches. To be president. Let's imagine what it's like to be Brian Casey. So I think, where are you? Brian, are you still there? Yeah, okay. What, you spend about 40% of your time fundraising? More? Okay, so you have a lot of chicken dinners? Yeah, exactly. But it was a good chicken dinner. Sometimes it's like rubber chicken dinners. Right, and you also have to have the ability to bring people together, and I know faculty and students are the most sort of lamb-like group. And the music school, I mean, nobody has any, thoughts that are impossible to fulfill. Right? Right. So you have an easy life. You probably have appointments every half hour. Easy, every day. So you're basically meeting and solving problems or, calming people down from morning until night. And then you're eating chicken dinners and giving speeches. We try to create some sympathy for you. I mean, usually people are telling you, our lives are difficult, right? We're just trying to turn it around a little bit.
Part of Yo-Yo's genius is the art of deflection and the ability to turn any attention onto somebody else and to empower others.
So, having said that, Mike, how amazing that you were able to find, to put people in groups that actually get along. What's your secret?
Don't let them know anything ahead of time. As we were walking from room to room today, my frame of reference is the Silk Road Ensemble, and when I started playing in the group, actually, 11 years ago, I got to do my first professional gig, but the way that I was even introduced to the world of the Silk Road was through a similar workshop that the Silk Road Project, then it was called, did with the Carnegie Weill Institute, and got to do a 10-day workshop at Tanglewood. There was like a smaller group, there was like 18 of us, and we basically just got to be additional members of the Silk Road. And my whole world was, you know, expanded, because I was playing with instruments I'd never seen, never heard of, and getting to work closely with Kehan and Sandeep, and I have very vivid memories of those first impressions. And as we were walking around today, every single room was like another Silk Road ensemble that was sounding incredible and like could go on tour, and we could empower them to do our work for us.
That's the big secret. Delegate.
Yes.
Right? So basically, good luck. No, but seriously, I think this is, I almost feel like we're seeing Silk Road 2.0 in the sense that we always knew there were people who were interested, talented, and whatever, but I think what you've proved, or what you're all proving together, is that, yeah, it's true. And not only that, you'll come up with better ideas, hopefully, or different ideas than what, you know, we might come up with. And Mike has plenty of great ideas. So that's evolution. That's great evolution. That's the kind of evolution we love, because it's based on something that was valuable, is valuable, but also needs to constantly change and evolve so it doesn't, you know, get lost. And we need people who will do it organically. Right? Mm-hmm. So we don't want, so you have to be the creative force to, you know, believe in what you're doing and just take it further. We can only go up to a certain point, to our own edge, mm-hmm. whatever that is. We'll try and push the edges. We'll try and cross certain frontiers, or you know, jump over certain walls. But there will come a time when, like, we can't go any further. That's when, you know, and hopefully way before then, that's when you're actually doing that. You're a different generation. You are becoming old, my dear.
Thank you.
It's amazing. You were like 22 when I met you.
That's true. I was 22 at one point.
But that's, you know, but that's beautiful. It's actually a really, really nice thing. I have a very good friend, Pamela Frank, right? And her father just died. And Claude Frank was one of the sort of, when this is a little morbid, but they had a video of him playing in some Schubert in an apartment. And as I watched him, you know, he studied with Schnabel, I thought of him as a culture carrier, you know, or tradition bearer. But I just thought of culture carrier because the way he played was almost like pre-World War II. You know, it was with a certain kind of feeling and of expression, very much like when we were talking to Kehan on tour, and Kehan said he had a friend in Iran who had recordings of like really much older kemanche players, and he was doing everything to become friends with this kid whose father had this record collection so he could go and listen to these recordings, because that's what inspired him. And I'm thinking that, you know, we all have different people that we learned from. I think Sarah said that she particularly liked you know, the claw, what style?
Clawhammer banjo.
Clawhammer banjo, and that's
Tim O'Brien.
That, exactly, Tim O'Brien,
Yeah.
and how that person was the person who helped her. So we have particular people that we're kind of drawing from who actually represent a certain world. And now, for those of us that say, okay, we must replicate it exactly, we're going to fail miserably.
Yeah.
But what we can do is to try and take the essence of what someone represented, and it's almost like the sound is the tip of the iceberg. It's everything else you put inside in you that allows for the sound to take place. You know how Michelangelo used to say that, well, you didn't know him because he, you know, I mean, maybe some of you, well, I don't know. It's like, I mean, DePauw is only, I know it's old, but it's 1817 or something.
So what did Michelangelo say?
Oh, so Michelangelo said that when he was sculpting from marble, he was releasing the statue from the marble. So in a way, as musicians, you are releasing the sound that's already there into life. So it's, you know, but in order to do that, you have to have the wherewithal, not just to say, this is how I produce the sound, but it's really everything that you are becomes those sounds, because it's your timing, it's your sense of rhythm, it's your sense of harmony, it's your sense of melody, it's your sense of space. There was one person that loved thinking about space, you know, maybe it's the bigger space or a smaller space, but it's, Isaac Stern used to say, you know, the music happens between the notes. Yes? What? How should I know? I'm not Isaac Stern.
What does
No.
it mean to you?
Oh, you want me to bullshit through, you know? Well, to me, no. You see, there's this materiality of sound, you know. So when you have a note, yeah, young man, a note. You see what I mean? A note, yeah. It's, you can have, it's a form of energy, but it's also a kind of material. It could have a certain density. A note could be a cotton ball, you know what I feel? Big, but weightless. It could be a lead, piece of lead that just sinks. It could be made out of wood. And now, going to another note, it could be a completely different material or the same material. And there's a space in between. You can stretch the material.
What do you love
until
about
it
being a musician?
touches something else. I'm not finished. It's very deep. A whole universe is between those
Got
two
others.
notes. Yes. Sorry, what do you love about being a musician? Tell me. I love being a, you know what I love?
Tell me.
I love being all the ages I have lived, because you know, when I'm with you, I often act like a 7-year-old. I love being a 7-year-old. No, I don't like that. It's good. It's a great attitude to have sometimes, because that's exactly the character you want. You know, you play, you give me a phrase, I say, right? I mean, and other times I could be the pouty teenager, you know, I could be the 17-year-old, but I can also be a 59-year-old. I love big music because it allows me to get inside anything that I'm interested in nature or in human nature. And I love it because it can, actually I can exercise all of what I think I am or could be. So it allows me most of all to transcend myself. So I don't have to think about myself. you know, so you're taken into another space. And it's great because I always feel much better afterwards.
What I like about that is often we have an instinct to be very confident and in control, particularly when we're on stage. And there's like a certain amount of vulnerability that comes with embracing a childhood innocence and lack of responsibility that you do so well. And thank you. And but I have heard you talk, like, it's all, I feel like we're kind of circling around certain things again and again, but it's about accessing those parts of you and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in an artistic situation. And it makes me think, like, even for this week, like, if you are a participant that's playing in Edward's Latin band and you've never played Latin music, like you have to give yourself the permission to be a child in that band. And you know, every time, well, we all play instruments well. Many of us are professionals, and it's often hard to change musical language and give yourself the permission to start again, even on an instrument that you physically know very well. And so, building on that, you know, I wanted to encourage all of our participants to make fools of yourselves and to be pouty and to be naively excited about your own bands and be the kid, be yo-yo as best as you can. But going back to, like, just the idea of accessing that part, like in performance, and like, what is the thing that you want your audience to feel or to walk away with after you play Dvorak Teleconcerto?
I think it's actually quite simple. I think when you're doing something, either in teaching or in performing, you have one job, which is to make something, either the moment or the material, memorable. Because if you look at it, think of it the other way. You've just given a performance, and someone in the audience says, "Honey, what do we do tonight?" If they don't remember, wasn't the thing wasted? And if you try and study something and then you forget, and you aced the exam, was that worth it? Okay, you have a piece of paper that says, "Well, we proved that you did it," but is that really? That's not learning, because you forgot it. So the first and the last most important thing is that you want to make it memorable. And why memorable? Because if someone thinks it's like what the memory of something becomes alive because you can build on it, you can keep it, you can transfer it to somebody else. And those are the connecting tissues that creates what I think culture is. It's like a little tiny building block that you now own, that you can actually build on top of. Those could be ideas, it could be emotions, it could be deep knowledge, something that you're building, some architecture in your brain of what the world is all about. Because that's what we're always trying to figure out. Does that make sense? So your job is not just showing up and delivering a product and say, "Here." You actually have to activate it in somebody else. So at the end of the Dvorak concerto, some people say that was a hero's life, so it's about life, homecoming, death, love, the usual. But you want that to have been such an experience that you have felt empathy for either Dvorak's sister-in-law whom he loved, or his experience. It doesn't matter. It could be biographical, but it could be that you were taken through, you know, the arc of a life. And if it's a hero's life, I like to think that people consider what it meant to be a hero, because there are always costs involved in doing anything. You know, become active, I must do this. Well, there will be costs, and there will be sadnesses, there will be all kinds of things. And it's actually taking a, like sort of like a 360-degree view about a singular journey and what that meant. That's huge. You know, it's like a meditation on some form of life. That's what, you know, and it never gets tiring, because there's so many lives you can try and express, you know, and there's so many different varietals of what this life could be, could have been. You know, you could take the point of view of a young person, or an old person, or a middle-aged person, a cranky person, an optimistic person. You know, you can, all those things can be part of that piece.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
But most of all, I like to sit next to you during Silko concerts so I can whack you with my bow and try and get away with it without people noticing.
Oh, Sandeep notices.
Yeah, because I tried to do that to him too.
Yeah.
But he very deftly is able to move aside. And maybe that's why you invented the block strap.
I had to
so
get away.
You don't have to actually sit down, and you could actually suddenly scoot away.
Yeah.
So maybe I was the cause of a great invention.
You were the cause of a lot.
See, I was the precondition of a creative surge in Mike Block. So when you sell those 1,000 block straps,
Yes.
I want you to just spend one moment thinking.
How much do I owe you?
No, just you know, those welts on my back, you know, it was worth it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is this terrible?
No, actually, that was really wonderful. I think we can open it up for some questions from everybody else, but is there anything else? Like, what are you working on these days? We've got a lot of stuff that's on our plate this week. What are you thinking about artistically these days? How's fourth position coming?
Well, we're doing this thing in the summer.
Yeah. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. You know what we're doing? So we're celebrating in 2016 the 400th anniversary of the death of Shakespeare and Cervantes. They both died within 3 days of one another in around April, circa 21, 24. And so we thought, clever as we are, that we should commemorate this moment by actually trying to describe in musical terms the globe, literally Shakespeare's globe, what was the music that was being heard around that time on our planet. So we've been doing some research, right? You've engaged a wonderful Sicilian cellist. It's all cellists because we have no other friends. You know, we tried. We called oboists, we called horn players. Yeah, like they all said, busy. Nah, can't do it. So we called our Sicilian friend, Giovanni Solima, who is very much tuned into, you know, all of Sicilian culture, you know, Arabic, North African, Spanish, Italian, and we've gotten into sort of Ottoman, slightly Persian, cultures, and if Sandeep ever gives me anything from during Akbar's time, it would be really nice. Well,
But this whole project is about finding the way that music played a role in what was essentially a massive time of transition for the world.
thank you. See, this is why you're so
Nailed it.
Wow.
Well, we've talked a lot about this program and your motivation for this program. Like, what's the statue for you? Or so what's the block of marble that we're carving the statue of this concert from? Was that 400 years ago, you know, the new world was starting to become a thing that was influencing the old world more and more, and that you were getting the Silk Road, and there's a confluence of like the beginnings of globalization and help me out here.
Okay, so basically, around that time, so there were so many plays written in both London and Madrid, like literally every year, hundreds of plays were produced. Why? So, you know, there was an audience that was, you know, huge demographics sort of would go to the Globe Theater and listen to those plays. And you think of those plays, we're basing it on the world was changing so much. The earth was no longer flat, right?
Galileo had just
Columbus got
discovered
to, you know, and the Jews and the Moors were kicked out of Spain in 1492, and you know, so they went all over Europe. They went to Turkey, they went to Greece, they went to Morocco, and some people went to Rotterdam, and then went to Eastern Europe. So we had, and there was unbelievable wealth that could be attained from people who took great adventures. Oh my gosh, that sounds like our era, right? So with the dot-com era, you know, the zillionaires, the 1%, we're making like a little kind of comparison between the huge changes at that time and the huge changes in the last like 30 years, or from the industrial era until now. So that this is, so at that time it was the Gutenberg Bible, and it was, you know, travel, it was the earth, it was getting to other places where riches can be acquired for and transferred. So and we're calling this program Distant Mirror, so we could do a reflection of sort of what happened then and what's happening now, going back to how we deal with fear, because a lot of people worry tremendously when there are great changes. So we just wanted to have like a program that says, and we want to make this open so that any cellist or any musician can take that idea and do the research and, you know, or okay.
Do the work for us. Yeah.
Exactly. No, but then use it so that they can actually go into their communities and do something like that. Because it's interesting. You know, how often do you have two of the greatest literary figures, you know, sort of work around the same time, die at the same time, and at least we thought it was interesting. So we're going to do it this summer. And Mike has been, I think, really the main part thinker in this and pushing this forward, because he has nothing much to do. He's only like, you know.
But it does come to a lot of what's happening this week, you know, with the internet. Now we're in the age of globalization. I read somewhere an interesting thing, which was calling into question where we are artistically, because now at the press of a button, we have access to music from anywhere in the world, from any time period. YouTube and everything. Basically, music has had, by definition, a linear history, because we were always influenced by the people who were right before us. And so there was this path that was being taken in any given tradition. And now artists can draw inspiration from anywhere. So now it's a completely non-linear thing where everybody is on their own personal path. You know, like you can draw inspiration from Cuban music and Arabic music, or you know, dive into like the jazz of 1920s, and you know, so in a way, this age of globalization and what's happening at this workshop is we're diving into all of this stuff that exists, and what can we learn from the world of music, from you know, going back to like that time period, like, you know, what was happening in China, what was happening in Turkey, what was happening throughout the world at that moment in European history that was such a key moment in Europe. Where was the rest of the world, and how were these things talking to each other at that time? And now everything is talking to each other. You know, just the fact that this workshop like exists, or that even the inspiration for it occurred, is a sign that we're all drawing on all these influences. So
I think what we're trying to do is to find better ways to interpret the world. And all of you play a huge part in doing that. You know, because I think it's really hard to interpret everything that's going on, and with a massive amount of information. So I think, yes, we have much more ability to do all of this, but can we bring clarity to everything that is happening? I think you guys have a good shot at trying to make sense of it through what you can gather in your explorations of different cultures and different musics. You know.
yeah,
That's what I think. Should we have some questions?
I think we absolutely have some time for some questions.
Okay.
Farzin, of course, is first.
Is he very, you know, upfront?
He sends a lot of emails. He has a lot of questions.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Farzin.
How do you become one with your instrument?
How do you become one with your instrument?
I eat it. No, look, I've been playing for 55 years. What do you... Grow old. No, become one. No, basically, you take away all impediments. Basically, you make sure that you mold your body to the most efficient way of drawing sound. So you don't cramp up. In my 20s, I used to play like this, you know, like this. It's not very efficient because, you know, you kind of, the energy kind of gets interrupted. And the blood flow stops. But so when you relax those muscles, and you know, you kind of, if I'm drawing the bow, I kind of lean over a little bit, I push a little bit, and I crunch up my body, and I try and just use the weight of my arms so that I don't have to press so hard.
Next question.
Yeah.
Yes, Susan.
I know you've worked with children extensively from different cultures all around the world, but what advice would you give for a music therapy major who would be working with either developing abilities, disabilities like autism? What advice would you give as, you know, an educator and helping out with music?
I'm just going to repeat everything since I have a microphone. Advice for a music therapy major dealing with people with autism and other disabilities.
I think obviously every disability has a different cause in the brain, and but the fact that the way we receive music can actually get to many parts of the brain is to actually understand what, you know, the neuromuscular function or the memory part, or what, you know, I think you can actually do specific targeting, but I also think that we're learning so much about the brain these days. You know what you could do is you could talk to the neuroscience person that's in your group.
Deepti? Navaratna? Yeah.
Yeah, will you guys get together and actually talk about it? Because I know, I'm sure you will have much more to say about it. But I know, for example, that I've played for people who had Parkinson's and who actually, and people with Parkinson's can once in a great while get it together to do or say something, and it's like music sometimes has had that effect. I've seen that happen, and also people who are in comas, you know, the hearing doesn't shut off, so that you can reach people, because music is also very physical in the sense that sound moves air. Air touches your largest organ, which is your skin. So, I mean, there are all kinds of, so vibrations are good, you know, that's, and people with autism who are, you know, physically sensitive, whatever, but obviously music can communicate without that touch aspect of it. So I think, and getting to people's memories is really amazing, because people with, you know, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever, it's, you can get to long-term memory, and that's also, that can give a certain kind of relief. So I imagine there are lots of things that you can talk about, but these are just some of the things that I think are.
Other questions? Yes, you're smiling the biggest.
Hi, I have quite a few young students I teach, and we've had a long discussion about the one question to ask, so we wouldn't be greedy. But 24 years ago, I played in a master class for you, so they hear me talk about that. And I was playing Shostakovich, and when you played it back to me, it was like that scene in the Indiana Jones movie where he reaches into the man and grabs the man's heart and is holding it in his hand. And there he was.
Kalima! Kalima!
And I was happy and sad and mad. Those three things very condensed, how you phrased it. So I have adapted that. It woke me up. And so when I play that way, I teach that way to these three feelings. And the children are always saying, who taught that to him? Who woke his imagination? So, who woke your imagination?
Oh, well, you know, for Shostakovich specifically, actually, it was, so I first played that concerto, I encountered it when I was 19, and I loved the work, but I didn't know how to play it. I loved Rostropovich's recording of it from 1961, but it wasn't until I read at that time Testimony, which is a book by Volkov, which now people say, well, he made up a lot of stuff, but that essentially that could be true, but they may not be direct quotations from. So there's some, you know, discussion about the authenticity of the text, as opposed to, I think, what he was describing. What he was describing was essentially, you know, if you are in a totalitarian state, you basically are asked to lie all the time, because you tell the truth, you're dead, right? So you actually have to, you know, you have to sign, you know, you have to become a member of the party. He had to kind of, I think he had to do things that were unbelievably torment causing. But he did it to survive. Now, think of how you live with that as a, for beginners, you know, just, and you think about being the survivor when your friends are disappearing. You think about what you're trying to tell the truth in what you want to write, but it has to be a secret. or has to be covered up. I mean, use your imagination in terms of putting all these things together, and you just have, you know, your choices are limited, and no matter what you do, you're going to be tormented. Happy, sad, mad. Because you're still doing the thing you love. You're writing. And you want to be successful, and yet you don't actually want necessarily, you need the approval of, and you need to be successful in order for you to write, but you don't want actually the people who give you that success to really know why you're doing it. So it's pretty, you know, it's a very tough situation to be in.
Your answer, it reminds me of what you often say, which is, like what you're talking about now is Shostakovich's story. What was his life like, and why would he have made that piece? And you've talked a lot about how, whether it's a cab driver, I've seen it, whether it's a cab driver from Ghana who speaks French, or it's, you know, the concertmaster of an orchestra, you're always trying to get somebody's backstory and understand why are they doing what they're doing in that long arc.
Yeah.
But I see that in what you're saying
really?
now.
Uh-huh. Well, because I think one of the things that, you know, I believe that one of the things we do in music is that we're not doing transactions. What we're doing, it's a different kind of transaction. You know, it's not like you buy the ticket, I play for you, but it's more like we're advocating for something. And in the case of Shostakovich, I almost never play Shostakovich without thinking of, you know, his advocacy for the lives of people who don't have voices. And, you know, or when Kehan writes this piece, you know, Silent City, it's also for voices of people that, you know, I think there's so much, it's about bringing to life something that is no longer necessarily alive, but something is alive in that music. So that's, you know, and I think that was the first time I felt that kind of advocacy. And since that time, a lot more, unfortunately, but I think that's the case. Yeah.
Let's take 2 more questions. So, and I will choose the people with the largest smiles. I think Zach DePauw wins, concertmaster of the Indianapolis Symphony. Always trying to get a gig.
Do I need a what?
Do we need a fiddle player for this
Always.
1616?
Oh my gosh.
event?
You know, how quickly can you grow your violin? No, I mean, if you put it in water, does it like expand? Or... No, but we just want to see, you know, what the parameters are. I mean, no
How's the
problem.
orchestra doing these days? Why are you looking for other gigs?
No problem. Let's go really way
Yeah,
back.
go ahead. Oh, we have microphones set up for this exact purpose.
Perfect.
This is great. Yes.
I have a question that I'm asking as a musician and a teacher of the next generations of musicians, thinking all the time about how to prepare them for musical multiculturality. And I'm thinking about when we translate ourselves into a new style, whether it's a new language, a new country, a new continent. And instead of talking, let me just ask you, I would like you please to speak to the extent to which your marvelous success in musical multiculturality has depended on your mastery of the tradition where you first began as a musician. to what extent do you acquire your new understandings and skills through the concepts, the abilities, the frameworks of your first style of training? And to what extent has that helped you more quickly acquire new styles? In what instances has that been a hindrance? When has that been culturally untranslatable,
That's 3 questions.
inappropriate? Yeah, it is. I tried to shrink it down, but any of those things, I'd be very interested to hear about that.
It's a very, very big question. I'll try and answer it, fairly concisely, but I would say that, yes, it's both a help and a hindrance, in the sense that, okay, thank you. That's the way I wanted to answer this question. I don't want you to hear me. I view the ability to read music as a great form of literacy. That does not in the least bit exclude the literacy of oral tradition. So it's like how you code information. You can code it in your head, you can code it, you can share it. How do you do that? I learned more about cultures from anthropology and trying to figure out how different societies have slightly different value systems. And I was able to apply that back to music to say, well, what were people's values in different eras and in different people. So, but essentially the question that I always ask is, who did it and why? There's always a reason. There's always, it takes effort for something to be. And why does it exist? And I also think that every culture has so much more in common of dealing with, what's desirable, what's not desirable, life and death and rites of passage, and figuring out, like, there was a very interesting moment when Gerard McBurney in Chicago was giving a talk about a Firebird, and he said, I spent time studying Russian music in a Russian conservatory, and they had 3 courses. The courses were Russian music, pre-Bolshevik, Soviet music, post-Bolshevik revolution, and then other. Now, maybe it's a slight exaggeration, but that gave me tremendous insight on what people were dealing with. So little bits of information can be incredibly important in getting to a certain place. I think understanding, being invited in is the biggest gift possible. Being invited in by a good guide is the best thing in the world. And that I rely on constantly. But my first tradition is, the music that I listened to or played, by the time I was 12. And that's, and so that I never give up. But I can use that I've learned in other explorations, to actually be a better musician all around. It's not like, I don't compartmentalize myself. I'm the same person playing all this stuff all the time. And with advancing age, I think it's more the same thing than ever before. I used to make a difference between chamber music and concerto playing. I make no such difference in my mind these days.
Thank you. I think.
You know, I love this guy. I have to tell you.
It's over. It's over. It's okay.
No.
We made it. We did it.
I love this guy. You could have so much fun with him. He is just the best. Really is. Thank you.
While we have everybody here, Marilyn, where's Marilyn, our photographer? This is our moment for a camp picture. So, participants and auditors and faculty, get up on stage. And Marilyn, feel free to direct us.
Can I
Okay.
answer? Yeah, sure. Come. Come on up.
I think that's good.
I'm not going to get in front of you. No, I'm fine. All right. Yes. If I could get this side in just a little bit more. There you go. Just be sure you're not blocking somebody. There we go. That's better. There we go. Great. All right. Make sure you can see me. I think I can see all the faces. Don't duck down. I'll take 4 or 5. Don't take off. All right. Ready? All right. Keep smiling. Keep smiling. There we go. Great. Couple more. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
All the cellists in the room. Everybody else, you can sit first. If you guys are moving, we do have a jam at 9 o'clock in the lobby of Lily. So all the cellists, we do this very quickly. If you're not a cellist, actually,
So cellists, if you could either be on the sitting on the stage or standing on the stage.
Okay, tell a picture. 3, 2, 1. Get out of the picture. First musician.
All right, we got to get Yo-Yo in a little more light down there. Hang on, we got another photographer. What? We need to get Yo-Yo up in the light. So either sitting on the stage or up on the stage. Much better. Fantastic. All right, everybody up here. Look up here. Okay, on 3. On 3, quit fighting. 1, 2. Oh, come on. 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, now on back to this. Back.
Not me!
All right, faculty, either up on the sitting on the stage or up on the stage. All right, and folks in the front 4 or 5 rows, can you please move? Folks in the front. Folks in the front 4 or 5 rows, please move. Thank you. All right. Up here. Here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.